my presentation slides.
Yes, can
Yes.
you make it poll view, please?
Um, Let me see if I can do that.
Yeah. At the bottom right corner, before there is a plus and minus percentage. So before that negative sign, you just click the icon before negative sign. Yes, that's right.
Okay,
Yes, okay, that's good. Okay, you can proceed now, Mr. John.
okay. All right, so I'm going to talk to you about the impact on, of construction with COVID. So I hope you get a good understanding of what's going on around the world, and it might be beneficial for you to know the cost impact and the schedule impact. So let me continue. Okay, so that's a picture of me in the right, top right, a couple of years back. Um, and the picture on the left is of an offshore platform. It's sort of like one of the most interesting projects I ever worked on, and I was involved with that in the North Sea between Scotland and Norway, and I really enjoyed it. And it sort of like it was 20 years ago, but uh, I still think about it every so often. So very complicated. So okay, let me go on. Okay, so um, we've been 18 months dealing with COVID. And what's the current situation? Well, close to 200 million confirmed cases around the world, 4.3 million deaths. And some people are saying it's a lot more because some of these less industrialized countries don't report the problems or the deaths or the confirmed cases. So it could be double that, or it could be, people are thinking it's 7 million people have perished due to COVID. So it's a big problem. In the United States, 630,000 deaths. Big problem, big problem. And we've got another third wave hitting the US. It's called this Delta Indian. So this is a big problem. It's going, I personally have had 2 jabs of the Moderna 6 months ago, but now the news, the TV, the newspapers are saying that people like me, I'm close to 70, I've had 2 jabs. I should be wearing a mask all the time now when I go out. So um, it's a problem. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about every slide in detail, but this has been a big deal. We've never seen this before, and this is just like the Great Depression of the 30s. Economic growth slowed, and it looks like we're going to be with this for some time. So bottom line here, COVID, I don't think we're going to be dealing with this for the next year or 2. So my advice, keep them masks for the time being. Let's see where we are in 3 months, 6 months from now. So here's the picture of the world. COVID in the US, 630,000 people have died. Saudi Arabia, you have 530,000 confirmed cases and there's 8,300 reported deaths. India is going through a terrible time as we speak. So is Brazil. So are all these countries. UK, France, Spain, so on and so forth, South Africa, Australia. Nobody can escape this. It's a worldwide pandemic that we're involved in. What's it cost? Well, it's very difficult to try and put a cost value on this, but we think it's 1.5 to 2 billion, possibly more, $3 billion, possibly trillion. So it's a real big deal. Okay. So where are we today? USA, Canada, Mexico, slowly recovering, sort of like limping along. India, it's like a terrible. It's really happening there pretty bad as we speak. South America, Europe, getting to second and third waves. China, I read yesterday that they're having it again. It's coming into their country again. Just about every country is struggling. The Middle East, some improvements, but still a problem. This Indian Delta COVID strain, big problem. Big problem. Okay, next. So what's it done to construction? Well, in Europe and in the US, the last 18 months, a lot of people have been staying at home, not traveling much, sort of hunkered down, staying at home. But now there's been a big demand from, in the US at least, for people to buy houses. A lot of people are moving out of the cities into the suburbs, and there's a housing boom in the United States and in Canada and in Europe to some extent. So prices of steel, copper, timber have just gone through the roof in the last 3 months, 6 months. There's a housing boom. This Suez Canal, that ship that got stuck in the Suez Canal, that caused a lot of problems. There's a shortage in some countries of some qualified workers like welders, instrumentation fitters. Oil and gas. I've been in the oil and gas business for 30 years, and it's hard to figure out what's happening in the oil and gas. Some days it's down, some days it's up. So it's a hard, jury's still out. We'll talk about that a bit later. Looks like around the world there'll be a lot more infrastructure projects getting built, roads, highways, tunnels. There's been a big push in the United States, Congress, to fund infrastructure projects. Generally commercial construction. In the US at least, there's an oversupply of offices and shopping malls. It seems like in the US, a lot of people don't go to shopping malls like they used to. They buy their goods and services online. So we'll have to see how it shakes out. Okay, so this drawn out, disorganized rollout of the vaccinations has been a problem. Europe has struggled with this mightily. Okay, it looks like in the US, if we can get over the next 2 or 3 months with this Delta strain, we might be out of the woods by the end of the year, unless another version or strain of this COVID hits us. That's a possibility. We're into second and third waves around the world. Here's the bottom bullet is a problem. So in the world, there's 8 billion people living on this planet. 8 billion people. Now only 2.4 billion have received the jab. So that means there's 5 or 6 billion people scattered around the world that need to get vaccinated. A lot of these people live in poor countries, Africa, South America, Southeast Asia, some Middle Eastern countries. So it might be a year, 2 years to distribute these to these countries. And some of these countries don't have the money. And some countries are getting it from Russia, and some are getting it from China, and some from the US. And some of these vaccines, that the Russian vaccine or the Chinese vaccine, perhaps is not as good a vaccine as the Moderna and the Pfizer. Perhaps it's not, it's just 60% were effective were the vaccines from the US Moderna and Pfizer are perhaps 90%. So we've got problems. We're not out of the woods yet. Okay, so what's happened to us as contractors or engineers with this? So a lot of contractors, engineering firms, owner companies have had to modify work procedures. We're into this mandating 2-meter, 6-foot rule. We've got to stay distant from people. A lot of people are working from home. A lot of people have had reduced hours. A lot of people have been laid off, furloughed, or fired. A lot of companies expect you, when you go to a site, if you're invited to a site, you've got to wear a mask. You've got to get temperature checks. I'm working with a pharmaceutical company about 10, 20 miles from where I live. And I need to go to that site every 2 weeks to check on the status and the progress and the cost. When I go to this pharmaceutical plant, it's a facility with 20 or 30 or 40 buildings, laboratories, and manufacturing facilities. When I go to the gatehouse, they insist I've got to wear a mask. They take my temperature check. One of the guards escorts me through the facility. It's about half a mile. He escorts me to where the meeting is. And same deal, that they're very worried that I will bring COVID into this facility, and they're extremely careful, because if COVID gets into this pharmaceutical, they make vaccines in this facility. If they get COVID into this facility, the government will close them down. They'll lose millions and millions of dollars. So a lot of companies have banned business travel. A lot of sites, the construction sites, have called for increased temporary offices. I'm working on a couple of construction sites where we use school buses to get the workers into the facility. And the rule is now we can only have 10 workers on each school bus. We used to have 20 or 30 before COVID. So we've had to increase the number of buses, the number of drivers, so on and so forth. Introduction of temperature checks. So a lot of owner companies, pharmaceutical, big oil companies have hired additional COVID compliance site staff. And these individuals, there might be 3 of them, might be 10 of them, go around the site, making sure that everybody's socially distancing, everybody's wearing a mask, so on and so forth. So it's a big deal. Okay, before COVID showed up, I used to do a lot of traveling. I used to go to the UK, I used to go to France, I used to go to Germany 2, 3, 4 times a year. I haven't been to any of these countries in the last 18 months because it's a big deal to get into it. You need all sorts of temperature checks. You need to fill out forms. You need to take a test. It's a big deal. So I don't know when it's going to change anytime soon. Okay. As I said before, COVID has most probably cost 1 to 2, perhaps even more, $3 trillion. What's the next 6 months, next 12 months? We could be looking at a recession down the road. A lot of these countries are spending a lot of money to get out of COVID, and a lot of these countries are, their budgets are getting busted. So there's issues. Construction in the United States and Canada and Europe, and I think in the Middle East, is in a state of flux. There's a housing boom, there's material shortages. It's hard to forecast the next 3 to 6 months. COVID will impact just about everything. Materials, major equipment. When I talk about major equipment, I'm talking about compressors, heat exchangers, pumps, this sort. I'll give you an example. I was talking to a manufacturer of windows and doors. And this company is one of the biggest producers of windows for hotels, for schools, for hospitals. In the United States, they're one of the largest window operations. They've got a factory that employs 200 or 300 or 400 people producing windows of that type of thing. And I asked him, how long does it take me to order windows and get them to deliver to site? He said, well, we've got a problem. My factory is right on the Canadian-US border, and 50% of my workers are from Canada. And since COVID showed up, I can only get a few of them across to work in my factory that is in the United States. So my production, my 300 or 400 workers, I've only got 200. And if you want windows, it'll take me 26 weeks from when you order them to when I can deliver them. That's the situation. I've got a backlog, and if you order windows today or doors, he makes doors and windows, it's a 26-week delivery. Well, that's 6 months. Okay, so now I'm finding out when I go around the country and talk to vendors and suppliers, everything like pipe, like plywood, like shingles on a roof, everything has gone out. It used to be I could get it delivered to my site 4 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Now it's 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks. So this is going to have a knock-on effect on schedules, to say the least. So late deliveries, and it's the same with, not to perhaps the same extent, but heat exchangers or pumps or a complicated compressor, where I could get them in 6 months or 9 months. Everything has moved to the right. It's not 9 months anymore, it's 12 months or 15 months. So this COVID has impacted schedules and costs. It's also increased material costs, and I'll talk about this. It's also increased indirects, supervision, plant hire, site establishment, productivity. It's been impacted big time. Okay, so inflation is another problem that the construction sector is facing. I'm reading today that inflation escalation in the United States jumped 5% in 1 month. 5% in 1 month. So if I multiply 5% by 12 months, that says inflation or escalation could be 60%. Now, I don't believe that, but it's a problem. And we need to recognize that inflation, escalation is jumping up. Okay. The global pandemic has disrupted construction capital industry, us. It's negatively impacted productivity, and I'll share that with you. Owners and construction have initiated travel constraints, limited face-to-face meetings, compel workers to work from home. Not everybody can work from home. It's only professionals like engineers, project managers. The workers, they've got to go to work every day. The supply chain. A lot of equipment comes from China these days, and all these factories in China and some of these other countries were closed. for 3 months. So we're just recovering from that. We're seeing compressors, heat exchangers, fabricated piping, engineering, these sort of things. They're getting longer to deliver and they're costing more. Lots of jobs are being cancelled. Lots of projects have been delayed, and we're still in the middle of it. Okay, so 70% of contractors have experienced delays and disruptions. More than 80% of contractors have suffered delays in obtaining domestic international construction project components. More than 75 companies have suffered project cancellation, suspension. Rebar has jumped 45% in the last 3 months because of this housing boom. And so anything related to steel, it's just about impossible to buy metal studding for internal walls of the US. It seems like these big companies like Google they're building facilities all over the country in the US and Canada, and they have purchased big orders, and they've taken up the surplus, anything that was there. So to try and get metal studs or certain metal products, copper is very difficult to get in the US, and prices are going through the roof. Plywood, OSB, they've doubled. So there's a big problem with construction materials now. So we don't know where the bottom, we don't know where it's going to end. Is it going to end next month, next week? We don't think so. It's to be determined. It's a big problem. So the second half of 2021 is still going to be a challenge for me in the US and you guys in Saudi Arabia. Some countries like in Asia weathered the storm pretty well, but now I hear China's back in with COVID, and that's a big country. We know India is going through. So as I said before, 2 billion have been vaccinated, 6 billion to go. So a big challenge in front of us. Okay, so this is sort of the meat of my presentation. So we all know that there's two basic big types of construction. There's what I call on the left-hand side, commercial construction. This is like shopping centers, offices, warehouses, motels, single-family homes, schools. And we see a lot of them. And there's a lot of these sort of projects in Saudi Arabia. Now, I've got an office in Florida. And pretty close to my office in Florida, there's a big construction project underway. It's shopping center. It's a shopping center. It's got offices, and it's a big job. It's going to be $100 million. Lots of construction going on, and I classify it as commercial. And the workforce on this big shopping center in Florida is primarily, I would say 80% of the people, the construction workers, are from Central America or Mexico. It just seems like it attracts those kind of guys, and nothing wrong with them. They're hardworking individuals, but 80% of the workers seem to be Mexican, and they're hardworking. So on this particular shopping center, which I call a commercial project, nobody's wearing a mask. Nobody's social distancing. It's like they don't know. It's just business as usual. They're up and down ladders. They're laying bricks or block work. They're fixing timber. They're putting a roof on. Nobody is using a mask. Nobody's wearing gloves. Nobody's washing their hands, and everybody's just working as normal. So I don't think it's impacting anything in the way of productivity or costs. It's business as usual. Uh, business as usual. The attitude of the owners who are going to be operating this shopping center is they just want to get it built. They want to get it built as quickly as they can and sell uh, groceries and vegetables and whatever. They just want to get it built ASAP. Now look at the other side of the ledger, industrial construction projects. And commercial construction is pretty much about 50%, 40%, 50% of the construction in the US and Canada. And industrial construction projects is about 40 to 50%. And industrial construction projects consist of petrochemical facilities, refineries, power plants, manufacturing, food facilities, pharmaceutical facilities, so on and so forth. So usually these facilities are in an existing campus. There might be other facilities inside this campus, and we are building a new refinery, or we're building an R&D lab, or we're building a food facility. So now the total attitude of these owner companies is totally different. They like the owners of these facilities are worried about COVID getting into the facilities. So they're very concerned, because if COVID gets into that facility, the government will close them down. And it'll cost them millions and millions of lost revenue and big problem. So the attitude of owners is different. They do not want to get COVID into this facility. They're worried about possible litigation. So they call for everybody's got to wear a mask. Everybody's got to socially distance. There's cleaning protocols all over the place. You see everybody cleaning things all the time. There's been a big loss of productivity on these facilities, and I'll share that with you later. We've increased the field indirects. We've had to hire COVID mitigation staff, dedicated cleaning crews, additional buses and transport to get the workers from the parking lot into the facility. So this is what's happened to this industrial construction project. We've seen a loss of productivity, 10 to 40%. So a project, a work effort that would take 1,000 man hours to do before COVID showed up, now takes 1,200 to 1,400 man. Okay, and then there's the cost, masks, cool down. So we'll go to the next. Oh, another big problem is on these facilities. The workforce has to wear masks, and some cases they have to wear gloves, and in some cases they have to wear goggles. So you can imagine if you are a construction worker working in Texas or some hot in Florida where it gets very hot, or Saudi Arabia where it gets very hot. These individuals are working 8-10 hours a day. They sweat, they get hot, they need cool down breaks. So we've got to give them 10 minutes, 15 minutes to take a water break or a cool down break, just like you see in soccer in these hot weather. So that's the way it is. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So I've said, I'm saying that there's a cost increase on industrial type facilities of 5 to 15% to be determined. And I'm going to share some information. It doesn't look like commercial residential construction is in the same situation. It's this industrial facilities that really take the brunt of the problem. The main reason we are seeing cost increases on industrial construction due to the effects on direct and indirect field construction labor caused by initiation, personal protection, smaller work crews, social distancing, busing. So I've already talked about that. So let's go through it. Okay, so we, Encompass International, I've got a little group of like four or five of my people, and we've been trying to figure out what COVID has done, because we've got a challenge. If productivity has changed, that means that we've got to really go through we produce 8 books a year, and they've all got man hours and productivity in them. So we've had to go in and look at all our cost models, and it's been a big deal for us. So we've been talking to a number of construction managers, site superintendents, estimators, planners, over the last 6 months or 9 months or so, on what the loss of productivity has been on specific trades, on concrete, on structural steel, on piping, on electrical. And I'm going to show you on the next slide or two what that is. So the feedback that we're getting, the majority of refinery, power, manufacturing, pharmaceutical, food owners, these and food companies are including contractual language clauses in their construction contracts and their request for proposals to minimize the spread of COVID-19. So they're putting the owners, these food companies, the pharmaceuticals, they're putting the problem onto contractors. Mr. Contractor, you've got to take care of this COVID. We're looking for you to take care of it. We don't want you to allow COVID to get into our facilities. So you've got to make sure that you take care of COVID. So that's what we're here. Okay, so we talked about this, and I'll just go over 2 meters, 6 foot rule. Everybody's got to wear a mask, gloves and goggles and so on. Cleaning crews. We've had to increase on these industrial facilities. Where we had a site office, we might have to have 2 or 3 site offices. Where the lunch areas or change areas for the crews, we've had to increase them in size. We've got smaller, spread out work crews dictated by the owner. We have required cool down breaks in the morning and the afternoon due to the permanent wearing of masks, gloves, safety glasses in high temperature locations. Provision of hand sanitizers. Here's one that I didn't know, but certain, I was working on a job in Alaska, which is a very remote state in the United States, and we had to get 20 welders up into Alaska, and I think they came from California. Well, the Alaska government, local government said, anybody coming into Alaska has to prove that they've been had the COVID shots, or they've got a quarantine for 10 or 14 days. Well, so that's what they did. But to put 20 welders in a hotel or in a temporary camp and feed them and transport them is very expensive. Everybody knows that. And the owner has to pay for them. Somebody has to pay for these guys in a motel or in a camp. So that's another problem. I'm on a project, a huge project, where there's 1,000 workers show up for work every day. And the refinery is inside an existing refinery. We're building a new add-on. And the owner says, you've got to transport these workers from the parking lot into the site, and we do not want them walking around by themselves unaccompanied. You've got to get them on school buses and transport. And okay, we used to have 30 workers could get on a school bus. Now we've only got 10. So we need more buses, more drivers, more loss of productivity, waiting. Everybody's got to get a temperature check going onto a site. And some, we give them a new mask every day. So it's a big deal. Okay, as I said, we talked to construction managers, superintendents, planners, blah, 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 in Florida, all over, Mexico, UK, Delhi, all over. So here's what we're finding. And this is important. So just, you're going to get a copy of these slides. So this is good for your future use. Okay, so we've got on the left-hand side, site clearance, earthworks, roads, incoming utilities, concrete, rebar, formwork, concrete installation, major equipment, that's compressors, heat exchangers, pumps, setting in the line, masonry, brickwork, so on and so forth. So we asked 30 or 40 construction managers, superintendents, planners, estimators, if it took 100 hours before COVID to do a task of work, if it took 100 hours to do a specific task of work, what have we lost in the way of productivity because of COVID showing up? Well, we got on the first one, they said, well, it's not as bad as you think. We're losing 5 to 10 hours because a lot of the site clearance and earthworks, it's guys in excavators, in front-end loaders, in trucks. So there's not a big deal. So, but we are losing 5 to 10 hours. So it's taking 105 to 110. Concrete, we're losing more hours because these people are working close to each other, so on and so forth. So we'll lose where it took 100 hours before COVID, now it's taking 110 to 125. Major equipment, where we've got a crane and we're lifting things and we've got a crew pulling it onto its anchor bolt or it's holding down the boat, it's taking additional hours. Everything is going up. Masonry, it's taking more because it's just taking more because we're losing productivity, we're wearing masks, we're fatigued, so on and so forth. Okay, field fabricated pipes, we're losing 115 to 135 because these guys, they're hot, they're wearing masks, so on and so forth. So, okay, bottom line, we believe that we've lost with COVID on industrial projects, we've lost 20%. We need 20% more man hours than we did before COVID. COVID has given us, has made us spend 20% more man hours due to all those things that I talked about before. Okay, so what does that do for us? Well, that's going to increase our costs. If we're going to spend 20% more direct man hours. So here's a typical $25 million chemical, oil, industrial facility, could be a power plant, a $25 million facility. If you look at it, it would say that the major equipment is the compressor, the pumps, the chillers, heat exchangers. Usually, if you break the $25 million chemical plant out, it's about 22, 23%. The materials, when I say materials, I'm saying concrete, I'm saying rebar, I'm saying structural steel. It's about 20%, 21.5% of the labor cost is 24%. And on a $25 million chemical plant, there's about 200,000. It might be 180, it might be 220, but on average, it's uh, it's 200,000 direct man, and that is the pipe fitters, the carpenters, the concrete guys, all this sort of thing. And 200,000 man hours is approximately 100 men, because everybody works about 2,000 man hours a year. So you can say 200,000 man hour project equates to 100 men. And we know that it's a bell curve, but they most probably goes up to 180, and I'll show you that later on. Field indirects, general conditions, preliminaries, the site establishment, construction equipment is about 11%. The detailed design, home office support, about 13%, roughly. Okay, so that gives you an appreciation of what a typical 25 million, if it was 250 million, you can just play around with the numbers and make it appropriate. So, okay, here is the cost impact on that $25 million industrial project. As I said, before COVID showed up, it was about 200,000 man hours. 200,000 man hours divided by 2,000 man hours per year equals 100 workers for 1 year. And we know that it would peak at 180 in the first month or two, and it would only be like 20 or 30 workers on the site. But, you've got the idea. So here's what I'm saying to you with COVID productivity loss. I'm saying from the previous slide that COVID has made us 20% less efficient. We need 20% more hours. So that 200,000 man-hour job times 1.20 equals 240,000 man-hours. You divide that by 2,000 man-hours, that equals 120 workers for 1 year. An extra 20 workers for 40,000 man-hours, and I'm using $35 just to give you an example. So that equates to $1.4 million. $1.4 million is just for the direct work. Now we've got the indirect work. We need bigger trailers. We need bigger change rooms. We need bigger lunch areas. We need bigger temporary offices, so on and so forth. So that $25 million project, if you add those two numbers up, could be $2 million if you add them up. That's an 8% increase to that $25 million. COVID, I'm saying, has pushed the prices up by an extra 8%. But the story doesn't stop there. I'm saying that $25 million project, typically you could build it in 12 months if everything went A-okay, everything moved along well. I'm saying now the schedule, because we've got a bigger project, more man hours and more cost, it's most probably increased the schedule by another 2 months or so. So we're losing it on productivity, on indirects, and we believe that the schedule is 2 months longer. So all our site establishment will be there 2 months longer. All our equipment, construction equipment, will be there longer. So it's had a real knock-on effect to just about everything. Okay, so we follow in Compass International. One of our tests is to follow construction costs, ready-mix concrete, rebar, formwork, bricks, blocks, so on and so forth. So we're seeing some pretty sizable increases on copper, on plywood, on rebar, structural steel, and there's a few others out there. So be aware that, things, unfortunately, COVID has driven a lot of things, it's been a bad thing, this COVID. It's really been a bad thing to us. I'm not going to, I'm sort of like not running out of time, but you can read this at your leisure. This is something that I've learned because I get involved in claims for contractors and for owners, uh, and how can we how can we reduce this problem? And I guess as the one I want to bring to your attention is the bottom one. Maintain, if you're a cost engineer or an estimator or a planner or whatever, I believe it's prudent to keep records, timesheets, invoices, what COVID has done to your organization. If you need to back charge somebody or give somebody a change order, a claim, you need to have this information. I think if that's what anything that I've learned over this 18 months, keep good records. And even if we'll get into that later. Okay. Okay, so some of the latest information. I don't want to worry you guys. You won't go to sleep tonight, but this Indian and Delta strain, it's a problem. COVID could be with us for another year or two. That's not unrealistic. Inflation, material shortages, delivery. We've got a lot of things coming at us as construction professionals trying to figure out how much things cost and how long things take to build. This has thrown this has been a big deal, this COVID. Recap some of the headlines: sky high material prices, lost productivity, shortages, that window situation. My goodness, if you're building a school or a hospital or a hotel and you can't get your windows for 26 weeks, that's a big problem. That's going to delay everything. You can't close the building up or whatever. So so what else? Okay, so here's this Indian COVID variant. Some doctor, some expert. I was listening to the BBC News like a week or two ago, and he said this COVID is it can change, it can mutate into different forms, and we've so far we've seen South American version, we've seen the Brazilian version, now we're into the Indian version. I don't know how many versions of that, so I don't know if I'm not a doom and gloomer, but this is a challenge. Okay, let me just get through this and then we'll ask some questions. So one of my things is I'm the part owner of Compass International, and we produce cost estimating books around the world, 110 countries. So my current staff, we've got 23 people scattered around. How we get our information, this LinkedIn has been the best thing that we've ever seen, because now we've got contacts all over the place. We've got contacts in 75 countries. So if somebody asks me, what does it cost to build a power plant in Argentina? What does it cost me to build a plant, a chemical plant in UAE? I've got not friends, but I've got, I call them friends and colleagues that I can ask a question of or get an opinion of, and that's great. So it's been really good for us. So where do we get our data? Economist, World Bank, Development Bank. We've got magazines and trade papers coming. So it's a big deal. But construction costs are changing every day, every day, every day. It's changing. Okay, we belong to a lot of professional associations. I've been an AACE member for closer to 40 years than 30 years. So with my thing is I like doing what it costs to build a plant in Saudi Arabia. What does it cost to build a plant in Mexico? What does it cost to build a plant in Singapore? I like that, and I'm reasonably good at it because I used to work for Mobil Oil Company before they were taken over by Exxon, and that was my job for about 5 years. I used to figure out how do we get costs to build something in Italy, in Turkey, in Egypt. So that's what I do. So just so you know, we produce 8 books a year, and we cover most industries. We don't cover the housing market, but we include oil and gas, pharmaceuticals, so on and so forth. So all right, let's see. So this is something else we do. Estimate reviews, benchmarking. So before we ask questions, if any of you now, and I think there's like 99 people on this call, you know me now. We're friends now. We know who we do. So I'm on LinkedIn, and I invite you to connect with me on LinkedIn, or there's my private email. You're better off coming through to my private email because my company, the sales one, there's a lot of people dealing with that. So if you've got a specific question on construction costs, inflation, productivity, come through my private email. Or I invite you to join me on LinkedIn. So, okay. So I think that's me just about finished. So I invite any questions.
Okay, so thank you very much, Mr. John. So we have some few questions here.
Okay.
So, okay, this one from Serge Lemoyne. So the question is, with the high inflation rates observed for the past months, do you still recommend to consider and predict the escalation inflation percentage while estimating at this time for the project to be awarded on the upcoming 1 or 2 years? How they do?
Well, you know what I do when I get in, and so everybody's saying inflation is going to be a big problem. And okay, I hear what they're saying. But you know, I think it's going to cool down. I think in the next 3 months or 6 months, it's going to cool down. Well, that's what people are telling me. So it will still be high, but I think we need to watch it closely. But here's what I would do. If you're bidding or putting a project together, and you're putting a proposal together, I believe, and I don't know if this is acceptable, but in your cover letter or in your exclusions or assumptions, you should say, we have assumed 3.8% escalation for the next year or two. And if escalation doubles or triples or something like that, me as an engineer or a contractor or a construction company, I would expect you to keep me whole, and because I cannot judge what inflation is going to be 2 years from now. I can't figure out what it's going to be 3 months from now. So if that excludes you from the bid, because it's like you're gambling. You're gambling with and whether the contractor can afford to do that, it could put them out of business. It could jeopardize them. So I believe if you are being awarded a project, you've got to say, we have assumed 4% escalation for materials, 5% for labor, and that's what our bid is based on. If this inflation goes significantly above that, we expect to be reimbursed for the delta. Okay? And if they say there's no way we're going to give you this contract on that language, well, perhaps you don't want to do the job for them because you could lose a lot of money. You could also make a lot of money, but so I would recommend being very careful. And there's lots of ways you could tie it to the World Bank or what their expectations are. We will say, or what there's the GCC. They have an inflation rate in the Middle East, and I could help you. I mean, if there's a problem, I know where some of these escalation formulas and escalation inflation tables are, if anybody is interested. That's all I can say on it, because 2 or 3 years from now, who knows? Who knows?
Okay, thank you. We'll take two more questions, I think. So
Okay.
before we present the
And you could always
certificate.
send me, I'm sorry for interrupting you, but if there's like half a dozen questions or 10 questions, send me an email and I'll do my best to answer them.
Okay, that's good. That's good. So one question here. What's the way beyond pandemic to provide claims, cost time, effective projects? And number two, about force majeure. Its pandemic belongs to it as PEDIC definition.
Yeah. Well, if look, I get involved in these sort of claims. I got involved with one where it was a lump sum price, and this was where before COVID showed up. So this contractor had a $100 million fixed price contract, and it was signed 2 or 3 months before COVID showed up. So they start executing the project, and COVID showed up. Now, they've had to close the site down. They've had to, all these problems came. So they asked me, well, what should we do? What should we do? Well, I said, hey, this is a claim. This is a claim. And if this $100 million job, and if this costs an additional $5 or $10 million to you, Mr. Contractor, and they're not prepared, no, that's not right. Nobody can foresee. This is like force majeure, an act of God. So, I would say do whatever you can to get the money off. And I know it's tough. I know that the first inclination from this owner will say, we're not paying that. Well, okay, so perhaps you need to cut your losses. Perhaps you need to say, well, if that's the case, we're not going to continue construction. We'll walk away. And because if we're going to do this, we're going to lose more and more money. So I don't know. It's a difficult, without knowing all the specifics, it's a difficult case to judge on. But I believe to be upfront with people and say, hey, we have not allowed any money in our estimate for COVID. We don't know what it's going to do, and if we have to pay premiums, if we have to pay extra money for materials, and our schedule is longer, we expect that you will keep us whole, that you will take care of us. And if contracting it's a tough business, but at the same time, a lot of these big organizations, a lot of these they recognize that you can't put somebody out of business. And if this 12 months ends up being 16 months. Well, we want our site establishment paid for. We want our supervision paid for. So we get into this argument. So what do? We sue them, we get lawyers involved, and we get all sorts of letters going backwards and forwards, and claims. The only people that are doing good in this business are these lawyers that specialize in claims and change orders. They're doing great business, and it's the poor contractor or it's the owner. They might only have $100 million to have to go to the board of directors and say, hey, we need an extra $10 million to take care of that. That's difficult. That is tough. So it's a difficult problem. One that we can't solve with just this conversation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, but
Okay,
if I can help, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, if I can help, I know a lot of people in our industry, or hey, that's fine. That's good. We're sort of this group now. We're networked, and perhaps in 3 months, 6 months, perhaps 6 months, I'd like to give you another, perhaps an update, or I've got a few other like webinars on estimating tips and things like this. Perhaps next year or something like that. I could get an invite from your group, from this section again.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, John. So before that, before our closing remarks, so let me introduce our certificates of appreciation. So in behalf of Arabian Gulf section, honored to present this memento to John G. McConville, Operation Director of Compass International, for being a speaker of the AACE virtual technical webinar on COVID-19 cost and schedule impact on construction projects and cost data collections, held Wednesday, August 11, 2021, 7 p.m. KSA time. Signed by Ghassan Hamad Al-Dusari, our AGS president. Okay, so may I call on Susan to give us the closing remarks?
Yes, I'd like to second you, Larry, and
Okay.
thanking the presenter for his excellent topic. It's very useful, very insightful. It has a lot of useful information to all, I'm sure. And as mentioned by the presenter, the slides are available, and he may be contacted for the slides or for any other further questions. Again, I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the organizers and the attendees and the speaker for all the good work. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Susan, go ahead, please.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to all. I'm very honored to deliver the vote of thanks for this webinar. First of all, I would like to thank our speaker, Mr. John, who honored this function with his informative presentation. I would like to thank our AGS president as well, Ghassan Al-Dosari, and AACE AGS board members, and all the participants for making this event as a grand success. I would like to thank also thank you all for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening, good day around the world. I think we have a lot of attendees from around the world. So thank you very much. Hope to see you soon on our future coming webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and keep safe, everybody. And it was my pleasure talking to you.
Okay, thank you, John. God bless.
God bless. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.